This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Dye Hansen, management consultant, and with me co-host Christine Salvo, therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning, everybody. And today on the show, we have Celeste Headlee, who is an award-winning journalist, professional speaker, and author of We Need to Talk, How to Have Conversations That Matter and Do Nothing, How to Break Away from Overworking, Overdoing, and Underliving. An expert in conversation, human nature, reclaiming common humanity, and finding well-being, Celeste frequently provides insight on what is good for all humans and what is bad for us, focusing the best research in neuro and social science to increase understanding of how we relate with one another and can work together in beneficial ways in our workplaces, neighborhoods, communities, and homes. She is a regular guest host on NPR and American Public Media and is highly sought consultant advising companies around the world on conversations about race, diversity, and inclusion. Her TEDx Talk, Sharing 10 Ways to Have a Better Conversation, has over 23 million views, and she serves as an advisory board member for procon.org and the Listen First Project. Celeste is a recipient of the 2019 Media Changemaker Award. Welcome to the show, Celeste.
Thank you. That was quite the intro. I appreciate
Wow.
that.
I'm so in awe of your beautiful intro, though, and also like, wow, I'm so intrigued in what you're gonna say and how the show's gonna go, because we are speaking that language. I love it.
Yeah, we absolutely are. I think that our American culture is just built sometimes on overworking, overdoing, underliving, and being praised for it. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just American culture, but I mean, when you look at the research, Americans are among the worst, right? The people who are the most addicted to toxic productivity are Americans, which is no surprise, but also the Canadians, the Australians, and people in New Zealand. So we're the worst.
And let us not forget the Japanese, who are praised for dying at their desks.
Yeah, and there's a whole series of, they're actually quite lovely photographs, but there's a whole series of photographs one guy took of people who had fallen asleep on the street, holding on to their briefcases in their suits, because they didn't have time to go home.
Wow. So I'm gonna say something right off the bat. You just introduced me to a new phrase, toxic productivity. I am dealing with this therapeutically daily, literally
I
daily.
bet.
Like today, I had to have a conversation of do not skip your lunch when you're not getting paid to skip your lunch. And these are hardcore sessions I'm having with people because their quality of lives are in the toilet. But I've never heard that toxic productivity, and I love it. So may I borrow?
You may have. I don't even think I was the first person that came up with that. You know, the thing of it is, and this is one thing that I come up against all the time, and I'm sure you do as well. It's so difficult even to get people to stop working because of the guilt they feel and sometimes shame when they're just sitting there and they can't even watch a movie without checking their phone and their email. They can't even like eat dinner without checking their email or doing some kind of work. Like there is a deep-seated anxiety over feelings of worthlessness if they're not doing something that is either that they can add to their resume or brag about on their Instagram feed or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I literally see this every day. And it's funny because a side effect of working from home is not taking breaks.
Yep.
And not knowing when the day ends, right? So I'm telling you, Celeste, today, I mean, it happens every day, but today specifically, it was a conversation of like, so when you're actually in the office, you know when it's time to leave.
Yep.
But when you're home, and I think that the lines are so blurry now, so this has been a problem, but I think that it's actually compounded and more of a problem even now because it's like, well, I'm already home. Well, I mean, I have all this work to do. Why don't I just do that and get ahead? But not really understanding this work-life balance is really creating a lot of misery.
And I think, we were already headed for trouble before the pandemic began.
Yeah.
Burnout was such a problem that the WHO had already recognized it as an official syndrome. But the pandemic has made it so much worse. We're not working from home, we're living at work. And
Yeah,
um,
I love how you just said that.
what I keep telling people is that you have to stop picking up your laptop and moving it all over your house. You need to choose a place in your house that is where you work. I don't care how small it is. I don't care if the only room that you have is a corner of your dining room table. But when you leave that place, you're not working anymore. If there's a business call that comes in, you go into that work area and you take the business call. And then when you leave that area, you're not working anymore. Because otherwise, you know how sleep doctors will tell you that if you're having trouble sleeping, you need to make sure that the only thing you're doing in your bed is sleeping. You want to make sure that your brain is associating the bed with sleep. Well, I want to make sure that people's brains aren't associating every corner of their house with work. So they have to make sure that they're not allowing work to reclaim every portion of their house. If they allow work to drip into every part of their home, then their brain will never turn off. It won't see the house as a refuge anymore.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Our listeners today could see my face on the Zoom that we record this show on, it's a little bit of ooh, ah, ee, oh, because this is hitting really close to home for me. First of all, since we had to move out of the studio and into remote, my studio is my bedroom because it's where I can shut the door. So my bed has not only become my workspace, my sleep space, it's my radio show space, it's my journaling space. It's like, this is bed. This is where Diane lives her life. But I also, when I get tired of working from bed, then I will go work from couch, work from table, work from coffee shop that happens to be open, thank goodness. But I can't take a call from there. And the majority of my consulting work is right on Zoom, just as I would be face to face. I'm on camera, so I can't do that in a coffee shop. But I also can't do that in a co working space because it's closed,
Yeah.
no co-working allowed. So, what advice would you have for someone who is absolutely no work boundaries like me?
You have to get off your bed. If your bedroom is the only place where you can close your door, then you need to choose a corner of your bedroom where you can either move furniture or move things out of the way and place a table and a chair, and that's where you work from. I don't care if it's like a TV tray table size. I don't care what it is that you need to do. You need to create space for your work, and that's your office. And then you need to choose your working hours. It doesn't matter what they are, but you need to say, this is when my work begins. This is when I arrive in my office, and this is when I leave my office for the day. And when you leave that office, you're done working. That's it. You don't check your email. You don't check your Slack. You let it go. And if it requires you to put, like I put a vacation, if I'm finding myself addicted to checking my inbox, I'll put a vacation reminder on it and say, hey, see you tomorrow. If this is urgent, you can call me. Otherwise, I'll get to your email tomorrow at this time. And sometimes we have to do that because we all are addicted, right? We're all addicted to working all the time. And here's another thing that I found out about the pandemic. People have, over the generations and decades, have made so much of their lives focused around work that there's nothing to do in their home but work anymore, right? People don't have those hobbies like stamp collecting and knitting and rock polishing. We don't have any of those quote unquote useless hobbies anymore because we gave them up in favor of all of the work that we do at home or all of the things that we do that are worth posting about on social media. And so, of course, everyone came home from the pandemic and realized there was nothing to do at home. They aren't growing their own vegetables anymore. They're not doing any of those things. I mean, think about all of this supposedly silly, useless things our parents and grandparents did, right? They played pinochle and backgammon, and they shared vacation slides with each other. All that stuff that we kind of sneer about and think is so cute now, that was actually healthy. That was social and healthy and relaxing, and it allowed them to refresh without doing something that, again, could be, we've become walking resumes.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. And you brought up so many wonderful points. And my friend here is listening in as we're recording it, and he said, chopping wood, like include that, right? But it's true. There were things that were distracting us. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I was literally thinking today about when I was growing up, there was always a card game going. And it didn't matter whose house you had to drive through. I grew up in a Greek culture in San Francisco, and it was like cards. So I grew up as a 6-year-old, learning Thanasi and, how to like gamble a little bit. It's like, but that was the thing. You knew what was happening that weekend, as all the kids were going, and the kids had a place, and the adults were playing cards, and there was food. And we had the TV on, but I don't remember much, right? And obviously I wasn't raised with social media or cell phones. It was before my time. So I was really reflecting on that for some reason just the other day, of like, gosh, let's bring back the card game. Let's bring back the ongoing score of like, okay, it's midnight, we all got to go to bed, but new game starts Friday. See you at 5. You know what I mean? Like bringing back, like you're saying, these more pre-social media, pre-cell phone activities that kept people connected.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, the title of the book is Do Nothing, but obviously I don't literally mean sit there and don't move. I just mean do nothing that you could add to your either social media feed or your resume. Do nothing, do lots of things that other people think are not productive. Do that stuff.
Yeah, the productive non-productivity, it just also echoes to the point of there are different types of rest. And one type of rest that we're really not getting, because we go from screen to screen, is digital rest, and staying away from not only the computer and the cell phone, but from the television itself, which is yet another screen we have migrated to, or video games, which, the virtual reality sets, the Oculus 2, you pop that on, you're still in front of another screen, you're still being stimulated. So, what are some good ways, maybe we have a listener who's listening, and they don't have anyone just to play a game with unless it's on another screen. What are some solo activities that can be done to achieve this disconnection, this recharge that is so necessary to be a balanced human being?
The first thing is to find at least 5 or 10 minutes a day to not have your phone on you. Research, neurological research shows that having your phone even in your peripheral vision is deeply distracting to your brain. There's a lot of things going on that are very distracting. For example, if you're the type of person who leaves your email inbox open in the background of your computer at all times, we know that having that email inbox, even when you're not looking at it, having it open lowers your IQ by 10 to 12 points. Yeah, it makes you more error prone. It raises your cortisol levels, your stress hormone. It can keep your heart rate high. And your brain sees it as multitasking. And we also know some pretty awful things about you guys are nodding your head, so you probably know this research. It's ultimately damaging to your brain. And in fact, people who are heavy multitaskers have less brain density. So you have to find 5 or 10 minutes a day when you can walk away from your phone. Go outside and walk around your block. You can do it. People forget the iPhone came out when, 2007? Like, it hasn't been that long. You can go outside and take a walk without that phone. One of the biggest things, since you're talking about rest, is when we actually get a break from work, what's the first thing that we do? We pick up our phones and we start scanning through Facebook or Instagram or whatever it may be. But your brain does not distinguish between Facebook and work. As far as your brain is concerned, you're still working. So you're not getting any rest at all. And people wonder why they're exhausted at the end of the day. It's because they've literally been working without cessation from the moment they opened their eyes until the moment they got into bed. So of course their sleep is disrupted, and of course they're exhausted.
Again, if our listeners could see me right now, I am literally gap mouthed because when Celeste, you said raises cortisol and you don't get a break from that. And I just wonder, I'm like, well, my diet has not changed that much over the pandemic. In fact, I think I'm eating less, but I am gaining weight. And it's that screen exposure and that constant click, click, click of Slack, that constant everything. So I turned off notifications on my phone and I turned some things off, but still there's even more that I didn't realize, like what you just said, that my brain has no idea between what is scrolling Facebook, I love TikTok, scrolling TikTok and learning things for fun on TikTok and manifesting things on TikTok and actual work.
Yeah,
So
and think of it this way also. Um, because you are raising your stress levels, because you're in this mode of anxiety, of constantly feeling like you need to be connected all the times, what's happening is that your brain is basically being controlled by your amygdala, your fight or flight mechanism. And when you're in fight or flight, your body obviously goes into crisis mode. It's going to store energy. It's going to make errors because you're never bringing in your executive decision making. You're never bringing in your prefrontal cortex that thinks twice and hesitates and makes better eating decisions and actually allows you to avoid critical errors. It's going to harm your relationships. It's going to harm your mental health and your well-being, and there's just going to be a cascade of events. This is all part of burnout. This is literally what has led to the epidemic of burnout that we're seeing globally. And you just have to, here's the thing. There's nothing particularly wrong with the tech. Tech is a tool, and as far as human beings are concerned, we've been using tools. The oldest human being, Homo sapiens, we've ever found was found right next to a tool. Like that's our buddy. I mean, we love tools and we've been using them for a very, very long time. So much so that when you pick up a hammer, your brain treats that hammer like an extension of your arm. That's how natural those tools are. The problem is not the tech, it's the use. Because when you're done using a screwdriver, you put it down. But we simply have not evolved quickly enough to allow our brains to hold a tool in their hands 24 hours a day. That's not how we're evolved, and we can't function that way. We human beings don't persist, we pulse. We need activity and rest, and activity and rest, and we're not giving ourselves any rest.
I love that visual of just holding onto a screwdriver all day long and being so insistent that I have to have my screwdriver. No, you don't understand. I don't go anywhere without my screwdriver. I can't go for a walk without my screwdriver. It's not possible to walk without my screwdriver because my screwdriver has all my music on it.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, how did we survive pre-2007? Who knows? That was back in the dark ages. I know.
So a common conversation I have too, Celeste, is with parents of children. And one of the things I talk about is, we actually still don't know the long-term side effects.
Exactly.
Because this was, I was the last generation to miss growing up with cell phones. Obviously, my children have them. Just about every single child I see in therapy has them. And we're constantly working on these issues around cell phone usage and what's the appropriate time and amount, and acknowledging that their brains are truly addicted, but their brains are being formed addictive. So it's not even necessarily that, like for us adults, I know of a time before. I remember very vividly, actually, that if I actually liked not being available by phone all the time because it served me, right? There was times where it was like, no phone, don't know what happened. But now it's kind of this leash, and we use it as a leash. And I'm on a leash, you're on a leash, we're all on this leash, and we're always constantly available. And so if someone doesn't answer, it can turn into something else, right? But the idea when it comes to kids, from a neuroscience perspective or from your own research, maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Sorry about that. Pandemic rules. My dog is barking. But yeah, the effects on children's brains is tangential to my research. It's not my area of expertise. But I will say this, that there's a difference, for example, between millennials and Gen Z, right? Millennials did not grow up with smartphones. Gen Z did. That's why they call them iGen, because they grew up with iPhones. And for example, since we're talking a lot about communication, it's that Gen Z is the generation that is most likely to think, for example, that a text exchange is basically the same as a phone call. And it absolutely is not in any way, shape, or form. And as far as the brain is concerned, it doesn't see that text exchange as communication, human communication at all. Not physiologically, not emotionally, not neurologically, not cognitively, however you define it. But there's this idea that the phone basically replaces so many regular human functions. And the most dangerous one is this idea that it replaces authentic social interaction, because authentic social interaction is literally required for the health of a Homo sapiens. And the way I describe it all the time is like, if you're a zookeeper and you get a brand new Homo sapiens animal in your zoo, the last thing you're going to do is leave that human alone. Because we know what happens when humans are isolated. We know what happens when you put a human being into solitary confinement. We die. we literally need that social interaction in order to survive. And yet we have this generation that's growing up that actually believes that digitally mediated interactions are the same as authentic social interaction, and they're not. Now, when you get Gen Z in a regular, like if we weren't in a pandemic and they were at a party, their social skills are as evolved and as sophisticated as any other generation. The problem is getting them to have those interactions because they think they're unnecessary, because they think they can go onto Slack or trade tech tweets back and forth, and that's the same as a conversation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and it echoes something. So I'm a big in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. So something my little told me was that if you're at a party, the way you meet someone at a party is you just go out with your friends and you kind of hang with your friends at the party and you kind of scope out the people who are at the party, and later you will Snapchat that person. So that's how you meet someone
Oh
at a
God.
party now, is that you kind of recognize that they're in the room, and you kind of see if you sort of maybe might like them, and then later you Snapchat. And I wonder if there's like an emotional safety part of that as well, because you're really not taking the face-to-face risk.
Yeah, and you know what? That's so funny. So that when I worked at a high school quite a few years ago now, it's been a while, but this girl was telling me about this guy she liked, and I was like, "Oh, well, how'd you meet?" And she's like, "Oh no, we haven't met." And I'm like, "Well, tell me more." And we're talking sophomores, right? She's like, "Well, we've texted and we text every day." And I was like, "So he knows your favorite food and you've never talked to him in person?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "He knows your everyday routines and you've never, uh-huh." And of course, me as being the therapist, I'm going, you know what I'm going to make you do by Friday, right? Walk up to this person, and it's almost embarrassing. And I know, because I think as adults, we can see this with like social media friendships, where it's like, oh, we're totally friends on whatever platform. And then in real life, you wouldn't even say hello. It's like awkward. Like,
It is awkward. I don't know
I
if
know
you
what
guys
you ate for dinner last night, but I can't say hello.
I don't know if you guys have had the experience where you meet someone and they say, "Oh, I follow you on Twitter," and you're like,
Yes, you know me really well then. Okay.
I mean, it's just weird. Like, how do you start that conversation? Oh, how'd you like that one tweet about snow?
Right.
It's awkward. And you know what? If they were having their long distance relationship over the phone, it would be great.
Right.
The human voice is fantastic.
Yes.
But when I was doing research for this book, Do Nothing, I asked one scientist, is it possible that written communication will at some point equal the voice in terms of effectiveness as a communication tool? And she said it's possible in 5,000 to 10,000 years.
Yeah, I could see that. We need the tone, we
Yep.
need the texture, we need the emote, we need and it does light up different parts of the brain,
It
right?
does.
That human connection part, that we are same. And
Yep.
we know that mirror, right, in us is so important, because what we see in the world, we see in ourselves. And when we have that mirror effect, we develop those empathy skills.
Exactly.
And if we don't have empathy, we've really kind of lost our way as humans, in my personal opinion. Like,
Yeah.
empathy is the thing that we need. So I love that you brought that up, and I think this has been a really fun, and also, to not poke too much fun at like social media and stuff, I have friends on there that I'll probably never meet in my life that I'm grateful for. So
Yeah.
it's the double-edged sword,
Yeah.
where even personally I can say there are people I will never, ever, ever meet that I'm like, wow, you did that thing, good for you, and vice versa. And we can have a genuine supportive relationship. Probably never talk on the phone, nothing like that. But I do still have those mirror neurons, right? I can see them, and I can appreciate what they're going through, or what they've been through, or what they're doing now, and offer that kind of support. So there's some means of social connection there, but nothing replaces that human interaction.
Absolutely.
So, Celeste, if our listeners wanted to learn more about you, where would they go?
Follow me on Twitter. No, I'm kidding. Totally joke. No, they can go to my website. It's celesteheadlee.com, and I have links to most of my stuff there, books and blogs and things like that. That's the easiest way. I also host a podcast for the conferences for women, which is called Women Amplified, which has tons and tons of brilliant women on it. So they could look that one up too.
I love it. And
Ooh,
for our
that sounds
listeners,
amazing.
Headlee is spelled Headlee, Headlee, and Celeste with an E at the end, CELESTE. So that's how you get to CelesteHeadlee.com. Thank you so much for being on our show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I feel the same way. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
super
you.
fun.
Take care. This has been Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Dye Hansen, management consultant.
And I'm Christine Salvo, licensed marriage and family therapist, certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist. Thanks so much for listening today. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Bye-bye. This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication.